Your Honor, at this time, the state is making a recommendation of 45 years with 25 to serve in custody, followed by 20 on probation, subject to the special requirements of 1615 for the gang statute.
Young Thug, the Atlanta rapper, and undoubtedly one of the most influential voices in the current hip-hop industry, is back and finally a free man, or at least a half-free man. Since the time Thugger was locked up with his RICO case and the whole YSL trial, a lot of things went down. It's crazy to think that he's been caged for this long. But after watching this video, you might understand why we think Young Thug will be back in prison at some point. And this is probably far from over. Life while incarcerated. Since Thug has been locked up, he spent most of his time in the county jail. And here is how it looked.
Now, a WSB Tonight exclusive for you. Only Channel 2 is going to give you a look inside the Cobb County Jail, where attorneys for rapper Young Thug say he's being kept in inhumane conditions. He was arrested in a gang conspiracy. So today, the Cobb County Sheriff's Office invited us to see the rapper's jail cell. Channel 2's Michael Seiden stood just feet from Young Thug.
This would be the typical cell for this area. It doesn't have the mattress that would be in there because it's not currently occupied.
As you can see, the cell is small, but also feels very claustrophobic, with a bleak, dimly lit environment that simply lacks basic comforts. For Thug, there's hardly any space to move around, with the overall setup feeling more like a cage than an actual room. Living in these conditions, Thug has been subjected to an environment that could break down a person's mental resilience with no normalcy. Thug's lawyer has also delved into some aspects of how the rapper was held during this whole time and how it all went for him behind bars. Here, Brian Steele shares some of the gruesome details of how Thug was held, with emphasis on how this confinement simply takes a toll on the human spirit.
Wakes up every day on a concrete floor that they're calling his bed, gets up at 4:15, gets shackled at his feet, his waist, and his hands.
Thug has been behind bars since May of 2022, which makes the rapper's trial the longest in the Georgia state. As far as his creative output at that time goes, we've seen Thug release a new project called Business is Business that featured such artists as Lil Uzi Vert, Future, Travis Scott, Drake, and others, and featured cover art of Young Thug in front of a judge. The album was reportedly a compilation of mostly old tracks due to Thug's disability to write songs in jail, still receiving mostly positive feedback. The plea deal. It might seem at this moment that Thug's trial is at a high point and that he is in a very good, happy place, as we focus on the fact that he gets out of jail after 2.5 years. But it is important to remember why he got an opportunity to leave, which was his plea deal. A plea deal is sometimes not always the wisest decision, and other times, depending upon what's stacked against someone, it is. It might have been the most sensible, but definitely not the fairest option to go.
Yesterday, Thug and his team, along with the judge, they were able to come to an agreement on a plea deal. So originally what happened, they were trying to come up with this plea deal between Thug's team and the prosecution, but they couldn't come to a middle point. So the judge got involved and said, okay, he's going to plead no contest, and then the judge will be able to make the final decision. So what happened is, and because of that, the state recommended that Thug get a 45-year sentence. They wanted 25 years in prison and 20 years of probation.
So wow. For being additionally on probation after pleading, Thug would be held under thorough surveillance from now on. According to the original source from the court, Thug was offered the opportunity to plead and admit some of the issues in 2022, but declined it back then and continued to fight. Almost 3 years from that point, Thug's decision has changed, and realistically for the best, as right now, Thug might have the new opportunity to see himself as a new person with all of the presented conditions. But let's dive into some exact details as to what Thug may face and the periods of his current probation.
Years of probation. He got 5 years of time served. Now, if he messes up at any point on that probation, there's a backloaded 20 years that he will instantly have to serve.
20 years in prison.
Yes, 20
Correct.
years. Now, the judge in court had some words for Thug, and she was basically just telling him, like, look, I'm giving you the chance to get out here, be better, be around better people, do better things. And Thug had some words to say in response to her. Let's take a listen.
I take full responsibility for my crimes or my charges. I want to say sorry to my family, my mom, my managers, my kids, really everybody that got something to do with this situation. I want to say sorry for just like having so much time investing into this. I am a smart guy. I am a good guy, and I really got a good heart. I find myself in a lot of stuff because I was just nice or cool. You can't be that way when you reach a certain height because it could end bad. The choice is yours. It's up to you. I hope that you allow me to go home today and just trust and just do the right thing and never see you again unless it's out of this type of situation. I promise you I won't ever be in this type of situation again. I've learned from my mistakes. I'm sorry. Through these last 2.5 years of my life, you are really the best thing that has happened to me because you made everything fair for me. And I just hope that you find it in your heart to allow me to go home.
20 years in prison. 20 years behind bars is something that will haunt the homie for the next 2 decades and will probably not only finish his career, but generally end him as a person mentally and physically, breaking him down. Imagine yourself being under the pressure of being constantly under surveillance and other people just waiting for you to fail during the 15-year probation period. With all the unholy things that people may say, the fact of being chained for 15 years under observation is quite exhausting and might catch up to Thug like cold out of the blue.
They are complex. A non-negotiated plea means that the two sides, the state and the defendant, are each going to present their case, their sort of ideal solution, who's going to plead, what they're going to plead guilty to, what the sentence for each pled guilty to charge will be. Each side makes effectively a presentation to the judge, and then the judge has wide latitude to sentence as he or she in this case, sees fit. So she could take a little bit of what the state is presenting, a little bit of what the defense is presenting, or cobble together kind of her own solution. But here's the big caveat. According to former DeKalb County DA Robert James, if this is a true non-negotiated plea, which is from all we have understood so far the case here, at the end of all this, after the judge gets to a conclusion, the defendant, Jeffrey Williams, still has the opportunity to agree to it or not.
So what are these things that Thug cannot do during his probation period? What are some of the threats or things that he might even do unconsciously? Young Thug has agreed to the plea deal, taking full responsibility for his actions and crimes. Some of the restrictions that he will face during the probation of 15 years were quite engraved in his lifestyle. Here is one of the restrictions that Thug will face, which will have a huge impact to his previous routines.
The rest of his sentence will be commuted to time served, but he can't step foot in Metro Atlanta for the next 10 years, with certain exceptions.
It's a scary feeling for all involved. There's probably no feeling quite like that other than sitting in a courtroom waiting for a jury to come out.
With the disability of being in Metro Atlanta, Young Thug would be quite divided from his family, which is known to be living in this particular region. Being an Atlanta native, Thugger not only had to leave his hometown, but also gave up on his cultural and musical craft in that area. However, there are stipulations to the ban.
There's a lot of conditions, so I'm just going to touch on a few of them. He has a certain amount of time, I believe it's like 24 to 48 hours to vacate the Metro Atlanta area. And once he vacates, he cannot be back in the Metro Atlanta area unless he is there for a wedding, a funeral, a graduation, and then his lawyer asked, could they add an immediate family member's serious medical condition? Because, you know, all his family, his kids are in Atlanta. He is able to come to Atlanta, but he can be there for 24 hours and must leave 24 hours after if he's having to work. The judge also asked that he does a lot of community things. She mentioned 4 times a year, each year of his probation, he must do something anti-gang, like presentation. And she said that it can be a live show.
How can I do community things if I can't go to my community, though?
Is
he allowed to go for certain things?
Yeah, he can get approved for certain things. He just can't be there like hanging out.
Gotcha.
And of course, no contact with any of the members that were defendants in this case. No contact with any members of any street gangs. He is not allowed to, anything that can be misinterpreted as gang language, gang signs, anything. He cannot do any of that. No contact with the victims of any family or the family of any victims involved in a case. He can be around like licensed security guards with firearms, but of course now he's a convicted felon, so he can't be around. He can't have guns himself. They're going to do random drug screenings. His persons can randomly be searched, so he waived his 4th Amendment, so anytime they can pop up and conduct searches. He can travel in and out of the state and the country, because she said in court, I understand that that's what you do for work and to make your money, but there just has to be a conversation. There's going to be
Let's get
conditions
permission.
around that.
In songs like Anybody, Take It to Trial, or Killed Before, Thug jumps into the lyrics regarding the legal battles associated with crime and defiance of authority, avoiding jail, and continuing with criminal affiliations. In the current state of affairs, if we see Thugger continuing his musical journey down this path, including his raw energy with the emphasis put on loyalty to YSL, this may be interrupted against him as the direct and symbolic support of the group and continuing the association with known gang members. What's next? Coming back to the music, before we saw Thug get locked up, he was just teasing one of his newer projects that was never released. With a tweet he said, "These past few weeks gave me so much to talk about. Y'all ready?" Unfortunately, a few weeks after this post and the potential album rollout, Thugger was sent to jail, and all rumors of the album were completely scrapped for obvious reasons. With Thugger out now, and with these new restrictions, realistically, a good question is what is salvageable from that project? Is it going to be a gospel album now? How will any music he has been sitting on currently be aligned with the courts? But there is one more important detail to know. Take a look at this.
Mr. Williams have no contact with any of the co-defendants in this indictment, with the exception of Mr. Quantavious Greer, that is his biological brother, as well as Mr. Sergio Kitchens. He's a phenomenal artist. He goes performer known as Gunna, G-U-N-N-A. Mr. Williams and Mr. Kitchens are contractually obligated, and they frequently perform music together. Your Honor.
So the fact that Young Thug can sustain contact with his biological brother is expected and logical, but the fact that he can continue further talks with Gunna is more interesting to look at. Gunna left prison after 7 months by accepting his plea deal much earlier than Thug did. At the time when Gunna did this, he created a huge surge of talking, namely calling Gunna a snitch, with rumors saying he betrayed Thug. However, now we see Thug doing the same thing, and including Gunna in a list of people with whom he can maintain contact, which again is pretty interesting. So this is a strong indication that Thug remains open to having at least some level of relationship with Gunna, and we might even hear some new material in the future. For many fans and critics, this information is particularly entertaining. However, only time will tell if he can live a life of fame and luxury for 15 years without slipping up. At the end of the day, Thug is free. Even though the conditions to be free are pretty severe, this might be a good opportunity for him to change his way of living. But 15 years probation for the next decade and a half, one mistake could land him back in jail. Let's hope for the best, and of course, if there are some further developments, we will keep you updated. We hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if so, please help us out by liking, sharing, and commenting. Make sure to check out these other videos if you want to see more, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We will be dropping new content every week. Thanks for watching, and as always, we will see you in the next one.